Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined, as always, by my esteemed colleague and proud Tampa Catholic graduate, the one and only Eric Henry of Horns247.com. Eric, the Longhorns were number one during part of phase one, but they end phase one ranked number 2, but they are 5-0. We're calling it phase one because that's what Steve Sarkisian is calling the first 5 games of this season for the Texas Longhorns. They are off this week, and then phase 2 will begin on October 12th in the Red River Shootout between the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners. The Sooners rode the momentum of a pick 6 to come back from a 21-10 deficit against Auburn to win. So there is some excitement and anticipation regarding the Oklahoma Sooners, who are on to their freshman quarterback, Michael Hawkins, who had a couple big pass plays and a big run against Auburn, and that was just enough to help the Sooners get by Auburn. But you could argue that Auburn kind of choked away another game, Eric. But we'll get into that probably a little more next week. Let's focus on the Longhorns. Phase 1 is complete. I'm going to start things off with a question about Arch Manning, because it will be Quinn Ewers who will be starting at quarterback for Texas, barring any setback between now and the Red River Shootout. But I wrote, according to a source close to the situation, it will be Quinn Ewers starting at quarterback for Texas against OU. But I want to ask you about Arch Manning, because we did get a good look, as Steve Sarkisian pointed out, about 2.5 games from Quinn Ewers, really 2 1/4, and 2 3/4 games from Arch Manning. But did Arch Manning, was he better than you expected in his time in relief of Quinn Ewers?
Chip Brown, in totality, the answer is yes. I don't look at Arch Manning as Arch Manning. I just don't. I look at Arch Manning as redshirt freshman quarterback. I look at Arch Manning as inexperienced yet talented 5-star redshirt freshman backup quarterback who'd only taken inconsequential snaps prior to Quinn Ewers going down. Now, I don't know if everyone views it that way, and I don't know if that shapes everyone's perspective on the question you just posed. But for me, that is the prism with which I view it through. The way he came out against UTSA, of course, I mean, that was lightning in a bottle. That was incredibly impressive. I was not someone who thought that Arch Manning was just going to throw for 450 touchdowns. That'd have been impressive. 450 yards, 5 touchdowns, and run for another $150 against ULM. Did I think he'd have a bit of a better performance than he had? Yes. However, Steve Sarkisian in his post-game revealed that they probably could have called a better game for Arch. Part of it was him not doing what Quinn Ewers affectionately refers to as you can't go broke taking a profit, right? Getting the ball out of his hands into the hands of the playmakers rather quickly underneath. But part of it, as Steve Sarkisian said, was he looked up the next week with AJ and looked up at the game plan, what they had kind of built in for Quinn Ewers, and was like, man, myself and AJ Milwee, and we put a little too many deep shots in the plan. Let's just kind of build in some easy throws for Arch to get the ball out of his hands. And what'd you see? Chip, I think I turned and said this to you at some point in the first or second quarter. These play calls looks just like what you see for Quinn Ewers. Those deep comebacks. How many times you see Quinn Ewers in the first 2.5 games hit Isaiah Bond on something that's, that hard sell deep, and all of a sudden you got it kind of broken off in the intermediate route, 15 yards. Those are the types of routes that, in my mind, are a staple of this offense under Quinn and are, Chip, the bread and butter. It was Steve Sarkisian himself who said, when I asked him in relation to the pass game, if he feels he's got, kind of using the pass to set up the run. And he said, yes, he likened it to those old 49ers teams, the West Coast offense, right? Back when that was an innovative, brand new offense, right? With Steve Young and Joe Montana. Oh, geez, I was blanking out there. Joe Montana and those guys, right? In the late 80s with Bill Walsh, using the pass game to set up the run. That's what you saw against Mississippi State. And it worked pretty darn well. I mean, sure, we'll get into the outcome of that game and honestly the outcome because we covered that in a previous flagship, but maybe, some things that held Texas back from scoring more points. But the things that held Texas back weren't Arch Manning. So, Chip, that is my long-winded way of saying he absolutely exceeded my expectations because I don't look at him as Arch Manning. I look at him as a redshirt freshman quarterback who prior to this stretch had little experience. And sure, were my expectations that he would come in and just, be the bare minimum? No. But what you got out of him, an SEC win, that's it, albeit against Mississippi State, Chip, still very impressive to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, we need to see Arch Manning get it done on the road. But what impressed me most was in that Mississippi State game when other teammates who have more experience than he does were making mistakes, uncharacteristic mistakes. Gunnar Helm with a couple of penalties and 8 offensive penalties that he had to help navigate and overcome. And Jaden Blue fumbling the ball a couple times. He stayed consistently good. He was the kind of the lone bright spot through the entire game. Obviously, Quintravian Wisner came in the second half and played a brilliant second half. I think he had 12 carries, 90 yards. His best run of the game was wiped out by a holding penalty, but I thought Arch Manning was the steady captain for an offense that needed time to get its bearings and was struggling for much of the first half. I mean, if he doesn't hit that 47-yard touchdown pass to DeAndre Moore with 29 seconds left in the half, it's a 7-6 game going into halftime. So, I agree. I think Arch Manning was even better than I expected. But Quinn Ewers will be back for the Oklahoma game. What are your expectations for Quinn Ewers? Because Quinn was, dealing. It is interesting. I want to give you this. The stats, Steve Sarkisian said, that it's been about 2.5 games for Quinn, 2.5 games for Arch. Arch, 55 of 78 passing. That's 70.5% with 2 interceptions. Quinn, 58 of 79 passing. That's 73.4%. Arch has 9 touchdowns passing, 2 interceptions. Quinn has 8 touchdowns passing, 2 interceptions. Their stats are almost identical. But what are your expectations of Quinn when he hits the field in the Cotton Bowl?
Chip, October 8th, 2022. Does that date have any significance to you by any chance off the top of your head?
Yes. That was when he came back from the sternoclavicular sprain.
I knew Chip Brown would get it. That's why he is Chip Brown. 21 of 31, for 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Chip Brown, November 11th, 2023. This one I can account for because I was here. It's when Quinn Ewers came back from the AC joint injury, 22 of 33 for 311 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. My quick math, and we're just going to round up here, says that Quinn Ewers is accounted for, actually, it's not even quick math, it's on the dot, 600 yards. Actually, no, I'm at 606 yards. And 5 touchdowns with 2 interceptions coming off of an injury. So, what are my expectations for Quinn Ewers? Pretty darn high. I don't see any reason why Quinn can't come in and top 250 yards passing, give a couple of touchdowns, and lead the Longhorns to victory. I know that's, pretty cut and dry, but I don't have I don't think there's any reason to assume anything differently. He's shown that, and Steve Sarkisian talked about this on Monday, that for better or worse, he has experience coming off of injury, so he knows how to stay engaged. He knows how to keep himself, kind of part of the team and part of the game plan and part of what's going on and take those mental reps. He's shown that he doesn't need a game or two to knock off the rust. And he's shown, quite frankly, that he can walk right back into that stage, the Cotton Bowl, the Red River Shootout, and perform well. And you couple that with the weapons, the offensive weapons that are on this year's team, the level of play that Quinn Ewers was performing at prior to his injury. To be honest, 250 and a couple of touchdowns is probably being modest, Chip.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma's defense is easily going to be the best defense. It's right there with Michigan. The only thing that Oklahoma has over Michigan is the takeaways. They are, I think, second now in takeaways, but they have 13 takeaways, and that pick 6 by Kip Lewis basically saved them in their win over Auburn. And so I'm interested to see Quinn Ewers because he loves the big game. And last year's OU game was his worst and kind of his best. Like, we saw the worst of Quinn Ewers with the 3 turnovers. We saw the best, completing 26 of 28 to finish the game, helping his team get the lead. Of course, that the Texas defense could not hold. Nick Anderson catches the touchdown pass with 15 seconds left on the clock to give OU the 34-30 victory. But I think this will be a really good test of where Quinn Ewers is in terms of all of what you just said, Eric. And I think he's looking for a little payback and needs to come out a little sharper, because OU picked him off almost immediately in that game last year. They knew what play was coming. They ran the route better than Texas did. And OU quickly benefited by turning that interception into a touchdown. So that game, epic, the best game day atmosphere in sports. But I always say, the Dallas area kids, let them eat. And Quinn is a South Lake product right there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So be a good test for Quinn Ewers. But I expect Quinn Ewers to come out sharp like a knife against Brent Venables' defense. And, I'm sure those pictures of Danny Stutzman in his T-shirt, Oklahoma only fears God, Texas fears Oklahoma. I'm sure those pictures will get trotted around because Brent Venables helped to model that T-shirt after that win, Eric. I don't know if you're petty like that or if you think players are petty like that. If you're Steve Sarkisian, are you putting those pictures up all over the locker room for the next couple weeks?
Chip, this is kind of where I fall on things like that. When it's a rivalry, I don't think you need things like that to give your guys an extra edge. And to be quite frank, this is one of the premier rivalries in college athletics. I don't think you need things like that. I think when it's and not to say this wasn't a slight, because that was legit slight, right? But when it's kind of out of the blue, as Chip models it, there, not models it, but puts it up there for the camera, right? When it's out of the blue, and I guess I have more of an issue with, Brent Venables looking like, I don't know who with the hat all backwards, that was that was what I got more of a kick than anything else. Chip, nevertheless, yeah, man. When it's out of the blue, I think that bulletin board material stuff, it like really resonates, right? You don't need that for Texas OU. Like, you should be fired to kick OU's behind any year, right? And how about the fact that you lost? Like, that is bulletin board material enough in my mind, Chip.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. All right, so what about concerns regarding Jaden Blue? Jaden Blue, 2 fumbles in the game against Mississippi State. He gets benched. In comes Quintravian Wisner, and as I mentioned earlier, Wisner rock solid in the second half against Mississippi State. Do you mess with the starting lineup? Do you put Quintravian Wisner in as the starter, bring Jaden Blue in off the bench? What say you, Eric Henry?
I don't, because that's not okay. If we believe that Jaden Blue has a fumbling issue, and I don't want to go that far yet. However, as I turned to you in the press box and I gave you the numbers, and you can put the second Blue fumble on me. Announcer's jinx is real. Journalist jinx is real. Because it was right after I turned to Chip Brown and said, hey, he's at 4 in 155 touches. Well, then boom, it became 5 in 156, right? Like, so you can put that one on me. But if he has, quote unquote, a fumbling issue, bring him off the bench ain't going to change it. Like, messing with the kid's head. I don't mean messing in a nefarious way. I mean, saying we don't have the confidence in you that we had when we started the year, that's not going to help it. So that doesn't affect that doesn't play into my feelings with Jaden Blue. To state the number here on the podcast, yes, 5 fumbles and 156 career touches, right? It's rushing and receiving. That is a fumble every 31 and I believe 31.2 touches, right? For point of reference, Jonathan Brooks only had 1 fumble last year, if memory serves me correct. Or maybe I'm mixing them up. I know Bijan Robinson was at a rate in which it was a fumble. Yeah. Jonathan Brooks only had 1 fumble last year. Bijan Robinson had 2 in his final year at Texas, right? So Jaden Blue, someone who fancies himself, a future NFL back. At that level, backs don't fumble at this rate. Backs sometimes can go 150, 175, 200 touches without fumbling, right? So that is a concern, Chip. That's a real concern. It's something that I think they'll get fixed. But yeah, no, that aspect in terms of the rate in which he is fumbling, and I'm just going to go with concrete numbers, that's a concern. I don't think, and I could be dead wrong, I don't think that Blue has a fumbling issue, Chip. Let's look at it this way. And I could be grasping at straws. Because Jonathan Brooks was very similar to Jaden Blue, right? Entering last year, didn't play a ton of football. And maybe I'm just grasping because Jaden Blue came out, did the right thing, spoke with the media, didn't have to do that. For those who may not know, Texas, the way they do their media availability, in a bye week, it's only Steve Sarkisian. So if Jaden Blue wanted to avoid this topic altogether until next Monday, he could have. It would have been 8-9 days, and He would have faced the questions then, and maybe he could have said, "Hey, I don't want to face the media Monday." He could have said, "I want to face them after I have a good game," right? So I want to give him all the credit in the world for coming out and facing the media following those fumbles. But let's remember, we're talking about a kid who didn't play his senior year, didn't play a ton of football his first years on the 40 acres. Chip, I think
played in 3 games as a freshman. Is all.
Okay. Yeah. I think there is just like your body has to get callous for football and you got to take those hits. I think there is a sharpness that comes with those reps, that comes with getting 20, 25 touches, where mentally you are, for lack of a better phrase, locked in. The ball is first and foremost above anything else. I would ask Jaden in a honest moment if that is part of the situation and that you just got to get used to toting the rock and getting that many carries. And it's just been a while since he's had this many touches, Chip.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Steve Sarkisian talked about maybe changing a couple things, in terms of how they drill ball security in practice to help Jaden Blue, but you need Jaden Blue because you need his receiving skills, you need his speed on the perimeter. He is sort of the screen game and perimeter passing game for Steve Sarkisian in terms of that check down, and we know that Jaden Blue can break it. So. Yeah, I would say my level of concern on a scale of 1 to 10 is probably about a 6 right now because of the 2 fumbles in one game.
Right.
I mean, he had 2 fumbles last year, one in an early game and then one really costly in the Sugar Bowl. And so seeing those back to back, that raises the level of concern, but let's see. You don't want it to become a mental thing. And look, Steve Sarkisian threw his support behind Bert Auburn.
Right.
After he missed, what was he? 9 of 14.
Yeah, I think that, yeah.
And he said, Bert Auburn's our guy. They just need to work on the snap, hold, and kick. And the kid hit 20 of 21 to finish the season. So, by the way, Texas not attempting as many field goals this year because that red zone offense has been producing touchdowns. All right. So, Eric, we talk about the phase 1. Anything, surprise you, good or bad, coming out of phase 1? Expectations, where they were exceeded, where they didn't meet your expectations?
Really quick, Chip, speaking of Bert Auburn, was on campus earlier today for Texas media availability. Saw my man Bert just walking by the stadium, walking by Belmont Hall, which is always one of those things. It's like, and Bert, my man ain't got no, a scooter, a little, some just, it's just walking on by. And of course, Bert can't miss him with the hair. So
can't miss that hair.
Nevertheless, I'm like, man, Bert, we got to get you, I mean, who knows? Maybe he didn't have that far to walk, but I was like, Bert, you got a little quicker transport around here? Nevertheless.
Was he wearing a snazzy suit?
Yeah, nah, he was in regular clothes. He was not. Bert, the suits are fire. The Christmas suit is fire. I can't.
Christmas
suit
is fire.
Christmas is fire. No, to your question, I'm going to start offensively. This wide receiver room, we all thought it could be good, but Chip, we were in fall camp, and folks, we wrote it, and so we weren't just making stuff up. Silas Bolden was making plays in camp. Like, we saw them with our own eyes. All right. But the fact this wide receiver room is so loaded that Silas Bolden is kind of, that quote unquote odd man out in the rotation. And part of that, of course, I think comes with DeAndre Moore, kind of his ability to take on the Jordan Whittington role as the blocker / slot receiver, right, plays a factor, and how good Isaiah Bond has been. But no, that's this wide receiver room as a whole has just exceeded my expectations. Gunnar Helm, everyone knows I'm a big Gunnar Helm guy. His ability to take his athleticism, become more of a threat, Chip. I mean, again, no one's going to confuse Gunnar Helm for Kyle Pitts or JT Sanders or anything like that. But he's a guy, even when you get the ball out, you get Gunnar Helm the ball in space, he's hopping right over you, right? That is, where did that come from? So that has exceeded my expectations.
Hurdle Helm.
I'll give you those two because I want to leave Chip a little bit of room to talk about some things of his own. On the defensive side of the ball, how good Vernon Broughton has been. I think a lot of the conversation was around Alfred Collins, but Vernon Broughton is just playing, and it's not like that, Chip, dominant, like I'm going to make 10 tackles and 4 sacks type of defensive tackle. It's his game as a whole, just as a well-rounded interior defensive tackle. And now, of course, we did get the strip sack the other day, but just as a well-rounded interior defensive tackle, again, everyone was talking about AC. I didn't expect this type of level of play from Vern. So that's one. The second one, the last one, again, because I want to leave Chip some room to take him whatever direction he wants, how well the Jahdae Barron move to outside corner has worked. Again, I was someone who believed that two things, Chip. One, the only version of Jalen Gilbo I'd seen was last year's version, one who clearly was a player still recovering from an injury, right? That's the only Jalen Gilbo I had to go off of. So I thought, okay, the value that Jahdae Barron gives you at star is better than what you will get with Jalen Gilbo. No, Steve Sarkisian was right. You put Jahdae Barron on the outside, fills a really valuable role that Ryan Watts, kind of left when he went to the NFL in terms of being that boundary corner, can step up, be physical, make tackles, be in playing run support, all those things. But making plays in coverage, he does that. And then, as Steve Sarkisian said, hey, me getting Barron on the outside allows for one of my better players, or now both my better players, to not be standing next to me, right, depending on the package. And that was something that Chip, I think, is crucial, because in the SEC, not that you're going to face a ton of situations they're going to put you in base personnel, but you probably be a little bit more in base personnel in the SEC than you would in the Big 12, right? And for those, I guess I should explain this. Your base personnel, 3 linebackers, right? Today's college football, today's football in general, you're not going to see a ton of 3 linebacker, situations, but you'll see a few more of them in the SEC just based on the offensive alignment than you would in the Big 12. So because of that, you get Barron on the field, you're able to get Gilbo on the field. That's worked out really well. So those things have met / exceeded my expectations, Chip.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on the money. I would add the red zone offense, I think, has exceeded my expectation. I would agree. We mentioned Arch probably exceeded our expectations. The receivers, I agree. Gunnar Helm, I agree. And maybe Jarek Gibson has exceeded expectations, especially in that Michigan game where he's, pounding it between the tackles, had that touchdown run. We haven't heard as much from Jarek Gibson since he lost a fumble, but Quintravian Wisner probably been a little better than I expected. Although I thought he would be really good, he's been really good. And then defensively, Colin Simmons, I didn't know that he would take off like that. Leon Galafau, I think Anthony Hill's been really good. I think we were wondering how is he going to adjust, but he's adjusted really well, and you've got some depth behind him. So we should not see Jalen Ford playing all 81 snaps of the Red River Shootout like we saw last year, and it was his worst game of the year because he was exhausted. I think you can You can take Anthony Hill off, give him a series to catch his breath, bring in Leon Galafau. I think you you trust him. We'll see, but I think he's shown you that he's a plus player. So, yeah, and then the secondary play, I think, has been, especially, Michael Taff's playing at a high level, Andrew Makuba at a high level. And we've talked about the communication, the connection between Makuba, Taff, and Jahdae Barron seems to be paying off really well for this Texas team. And I agree, Vernon Broughton, let's go. I mean, he is following in the mold of the Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy. Just get me a chance, give me some reps, and I'll show you something. He is doing it, and I think we believed Alfred Collins, and Collins is making plays. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's doing really well against the run. He is getting, he's affecting the quarterback. He may not have the numbers that Vernon Broughton has, but they're getting it done right now. So the run defense has held up, and it'll get more demanding. And we'll check in on those numbers. But as of right now, Texas holding opponents to 3.2 yards per carry. You'll take that, especially if it lasts all season. You'll definitely take that. I thought it was interesting, Eric, that and you kind of referenced this, but Steve Sarkisian saying DeAndre Moore is the leader of that wide receiver room, the captain. So in a room with some veterans like Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, you've got sophomore DeAndre Moore as the leader of that wide receiver room, that oh so talented wide receiver room. Your thoughts?
I'll say this. I've been, and I kind of talked about it, super impressed, Chip, with DeAndre Moore. I mean, let's just, kind of take a step back here for a second. And you're talking about a kid who didn't get a ton of playing time last year, right? Oops. That's not what we want. Take it or leave it. Chip, I'm so fired up at the fact that my lead is extending over you. I just can't wait to continue to build that lead. I'm pushing buttons and going all wild over here. All right. DeAndre Moore. No, this kid didn't play a ton of football last year. And let's just, both him, I'm going to include Ryan Niblett for a second. I know you didn't ask me about him, but let's just think about this for a second. Those guys come in with Jonte Cook. Jonte Cook emerges as clearly like the first freshman of that receiver trio who is ready to make plays. And that has to be somewhat demoralizing, right? So the fact that both Niblett and DeAndre Moore kept their head in the game, and now Niblett got his opportunity at running back, that's great. But Chip, I just was really impressed with his game last week against Mississippi State, catching the 2 touchdowns. His confidence level is you can tell he's kind of got that Cali swag. He was more from Anaheim, like someone who is kind of just exuding confidence when you talk to him. But how ferocious and how fierce and how intentional he is in blocking in the run game. I'll take a hold. The hold that DeAndre Moore was called for, not that you want silly holds from the perimeter guys, but that was an effort hold, right? I got no problem with that. I got no problem with that play.
I thought it was questionable.
And that too, whether it was actually a hold, that part too. Really, really impressive. I mean, as an all-around, well-rounded football player, that's the kind of stuff. And again, he likened it. And I asked him, he said, guys, I sound like a broken record about giving the credit to Jay Witt. But Chip, you see it, right? Like receivers aren't, you've covered this game long enough. You may have handful of guys in history who are born with that mentality as a receiver. Outside of that, you got to kind of want to do that. You got to kind of learn to do that. Understand that that's going to make you a pro. That's going to make you money, right? And look no further than the guy who was his mentor last year. He gets drafted, makes an NFL roster, and is now having an impact in the NFL because of his ability as an all-around player. He sees that. So very impressed with DeAndre Moore.
Yeah, I agree. He could have had 3 touchdowns if he'd have, if he knew where his feet were heading down on that 20-yard reception that he was marked out at the 1. And he was like, are you kidding me? And that set up a Jaden Blue 1-yard touchdown run instead of a third DeAndre Moore TD reception in that Mississippi State game. Okay, Colin Simmons leads the team in tackles for loss. He's got 6 of them. He's got 4 sacks. Team leading 4 sacks. He's got 18 tackles, most of any defensive lineman on the team, with a forced fumble. Yet he's not getting more reps than Trey Moore. Trey Moore got 47 snaps against Mississippi State. Colin Simmons got 41. Does this, the number of snaps in the game, need to change to where my man Colin Simmons is at least getting more snaps than Trey Moore? This is our weekly check-in segment on Trey Moore. God bless him. 14 and a half sacks at UTSA last year. 0 sacks, 0 tackles for loss. He doesn't even have a quarterback hurry, according to Texas's own stats. Eric, help me here.
All right. Listen, I think that's off because I can. Trey had 2 quarterback hurries, and I can literally vision in my head last week. I'm pretty sure Texas is pulling that from Stat Broadcast, and that's always subjective. That aside, I laugh, Chip, because I've probably had this conversation with 4 other people before I'm now having it with you, my man. Actually, no, wait, we had it on Take 2. See what I did there? Go check out the Take 2 column.
Yeah, check out the Take 2 column at horns247.com.
My argument there is the same. I think Colin Simmons is playing excellent football. I think he's outstanding. Chip, you may know this off the top of your head. Is the freshman record for Texas sacks? I know it's Tony Bracken's. Is it 10 and a half or 13? Do you happen to know? Go ahead.
Mike Campbell
okay.
in 1975 had 13. Tony Bracken's was the last freshman to have double-digit sacks, 10 in 1993.
There you go. All right, my bad. So I'm mistaken. So it's actually a little bit higher than that. I don't think he's going to get 13, but double digits I think is within reach for Colin Simmons. Is that much of a playmaker? Chip, there was a play. It's in my notes. I don't have my notebook that I use during games on me right here. It was a first half play in which Jermaine Lole, Alfred Collins, and I cannot remember who the end was, but it was a 3-man, three down lineman. And Colin Simmons, it wasn't quite the A gap. It was kind of like between the A.5 and the B gap, right? It's kind of like not quite over the guard, kind of shading the right guard's inside shoulder. I don't know if the guard saw 11 and was so focused on the first step, which of course you're interior, and so not like you got a ton of room to go. But I don't know if the guard was so focused on the first step that he didn't quite know what to do. But Colin Simmons got his hands up into that guard and drove him back in a way that I was like, whoa. Because when I first saw that look, I was like, Simmons is not rushing from the outside. He's going to rush inside. He's going to drop. And he didn't drop, and he rushed as the fourth rusher. That, if he has that ability, then everything I'm saying goes out the window. With that being said, I continue to just like the idea of using him the way you've used him now that has made him effective, because I want this kid, Chip. Eventually, it will be his time. And that may come in week 11, week 12, week 13. But you want to know what I want out of Colin Simmons? I want 10 to 12 plays against Oklahoma and Georgia that he's just pinning his ears back and getting after Oklahoma's young quarterback, the freshman, and get after Carson Beck. That's what I want in the immediate future. I don't want to tinker with anything regarding him over the next 17, 18 days. Once you get past that, all right, maybe it's time. But the only thing I want him focused on is going getting the quarterback over these next 2 weeks, Chip.
Because he's got big game. He's a big game hunter. Against Michigan, 6 quarterback pressures. He was mad. He thought he should have had 4 sacks. He did have 1 sack. He thought he should have 4. So, and he's from Duncanville. Dallas area kid in the Red River Shootout. Let him eat. I'm just saying. This is Pete Kwiatkowski's position group. PK. Don't forget, let the Dallas kids eat. In the Red River Shootout, they tend to show up and show out in front of their friends and family. Just saying. All right, FYI, Texas has won 11 straight regular season games, dating to last year's loss to OU, and they've won 11 straight home games, dating to the TCU loss at home in 2022. And for only the 3rd time in the last 55 years, Texas has started 5-0 in back-to-back seasons. The last time that happened was 08-09. So tells you where Steve Sarkisian is in terms of getting this program back into the national relevance in college football, because the joke has been running since really 2016 when John Tessitore screamed, Texas is back after beating Notre Dame. And then Notre Dame ended up going 4-8 and Texas really wasn't back. So it was like, is Texas back? Is Texas back? Is Texas back? No one wanted to say it, but now it's clear that Texas is back to being relevant in college football. Eric, before we go to take it or leave it, anything else stand out to you from Steve Sarkisian this week, or any nuggets that you've come across?
I'm going to add one Steve Sarkisian nugget and then maybe a housekeeping nugget. The Steve Sarkisian nugget I found really interesting was just kind of his approach to the bye week. You know, I asked him because he has an 11-3 record in his career over the bye week, you know, if there's any commonalities that he sees or notices. And he said, you know, hey, he couldn't even remember those games. If you asked him, it really is a matter of kind of looking at each team and assessing and trying to tinker. And for me, I guess, Chip, what impresses me most about that answer is that it's a guy who truly is focused every week on, like, all right, I don't care about the 5-0 record. I don't care about, you know, this and about the level of success. Just finding those fine details, those ways that we can do this better. That is, it's just something that there's a cerebral nature about Steve that when it comes out is always very impressive. And from just talking with people who, you know, have been around the program a long time, yourself included, that might not have been the case with previous coaches. So that stands out to me. Chip, let me do one house. I want to give you a chance if there's anything stands out to you, and then toss it back to me for one housekeeping note, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think it's been refreshing to to have Steve Sarkisian be as transparent, I think, as he has, and as thoughtful as he is in his, I mean, even him volunteering the intel behind his decision to take points off the board against Mississippi State, the 49-yard doink field goal that doinked off the right upright and through for Bert Auburn. Sarkisian said going into that drive, if he had 4th and 3, he was going to go for it. After the penalty on Mississippi State, it went from 4th and 8 to 4th and 3. So he took the points off the board and went for it. And I don't know about the play call. It wasn't, kind of thrown to the wide side of the field. But I think Sarkisian has a good handle on this team. I think the team culture, the obsession with the details of winning, that has grabbed hold of this football team, and so it's been impressive. I think we touched on the significant factors from phase 1, and so let's go back to your housekeeping.
Chip, if we had a clap and applause sound, I would sound it. Power Mizzou, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. We're taping this on October 1st. Today is the first official day for Power Mizzou, the number 9 team in the nation. They are now part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Give them a follow. Give the guys a follow. Gabe DeArmond, Gerard Hamilton, Drew King, Sean Williams. Just want to say, of course, and it's relevant with Texas being the SEC, and they are a 5-0 team. Get your intel, folks, because you could see Mizzou down the road. Power Mizzou. Welcome to the 24/7 Sports family. Go give him a follow.
Yeah, I've known Gabe DeArmond for a long time. I knew his dad, Mike DeArmond, who wrote for the Kansas City Star. And Gabe he's a total pro. I'm so excited that Power Mizzou is part of the 24/7 Sports Network. And that's another reason to become an annual member at horns247.com so that you get VIP access to all of the team sites on the preeminent 24/7 Sports Network. And as most everyone probably knows, big game this week for Missouri. They are going to College Station to take on the Aggies. And that looks like a crossroad turning point game for both of those teams. Let's see how that one turns out. Yes, head over to powermizzou.com. All right, Eric, you ready to throw some salt in these wounds with some take it or leave it?
I am absolutely ready, Chip.
All right, let's do it. All right, if you're watching us on the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel, we will roll on into some take it or leave it. All right, do you want to give us the damage, Eric, before we get into this week's take it or leave it?
My lead continues to swell. What can I say? I mean, it's. I have great respect and reverence for Chip Brown, but it's just starting to get easy at this point. Now let me tone it down because it's only week 5. I can be humbled very quickly. Last week, here's what we had: Mississippi State reached 60 points. Chip Brown said, "I gotta find a way to catch back up." So I'm going, yes. Texas did not reach 60 points.
Dumb, desperate move on my part.
It was too early. Start throwing Hail Marys, Chip. So I took that one because I said no. Quinn Ewers would start against Mississippi State. Both of us hit that one. He did not. And the last one is one that we'll have to come back to at the end of the year. That Quinn Ewers will break Colt McCoy's record of 34 touchdowns. So we are now at myself, 9, Chip Brown, 5.
Working 9 to 5. All right. Let's get into this week's take it or leave it. Eric, Quinn Ewers currently tied for 8th in the Heisman Trophy odds at plus 2,500, according to BetMGM. Will be back in the top 5 after the OU game. Take it or leave it.
This one I was a little bit torn on. However, I'm taking it, Chip. As I said, I think Quinn Ewers is going to have an excellent performance. I understand he is facing a very, very formidable defense in the Oklahoma Sooners and Brent Venables. However, Quinn's a big-time player. Big time players make big time plays, big time games. And I expect Quinn to respond in turn. So I'm taking it, Chip.
I was hoping you would leave it because I'm also taking it. I look around at the Heisman odds. You got Jalen Milroe up there at plus 175. Cam Ward, Miami quarterback, at plus 500. Travis Hunter at plus 700. Then it gets where I think Quinn can move right in there. Ashton Genty, the running back from Boise State, plus 900. Dylan Gabriel, quarterback at Oregon, plus 1,400. Tied with Nico Iamaleava at plus 1,400. Then Jackson Dart at plus 2,000 before you get to Quinn. And Carson Beck and Miller Moss all tied at plus 2,500. So I am taking that as well, Eric. Take it or leave it, number 2.
Take it or leave it, number 2. Your underrated offensive player from phase 1 is, don't call him Trey because his mama named him Quintravion Wisner. Take it or leave it, Chip.
You know, I like this, but I might have to go with you know what? I was going to say Ryan Wingo, but Ryan Wingo's been a little quiet here, and Quintravion's coming off a nice game against Mississippi State. So, you know what? I'll take this. I'll take it. I think Wisner's shown you the toughness, the ability to catch the football, the grit and determination in that second half against Mississippi State when, remember, Texas only ran it for like 1.7 yards in the first half, and they finished the game averaging 6.8, and that was largely because of what Wisner did. So I'll take this, Eric. What say you?
I am going to leave it, and that's no shade on Quintravion, who is really quietly having a solid year, and no shade at all. Kind of making that natural transition in his second year. But I just sang this guy's praises. I'm going to continue. I'm going DeAndre Moore. Again, really like it. I know the counting stats got to a bit of a slow start, didn't have a catch early on, but I love everything he brings to this offense, and I think he's only going to continue to excel. And Chip, it wouldn't shock me if that's just him his entire career. Maybe DeAndre Moore is never the number 1 receiver on this team. Maybe he's never a guy who catches 10 touchdowns and, is near 1,000 yards. But I think he's going to have an impact because of the way he plays football. So I'm taking it.
I like it. DeAndre Moore, the captain of the receiver room. All right, Eric, take it or leave it, number 3. Your underrated defensive player from phase 1 is Lianga Lafau. Take it or leave it.
Chip, I am going to concede that this is just sheer lifetime achievement award here. David Benda's playing really good football. And I know, listen, Benda's never going to wow the advanced analytics. He's never going to be the highest graded runner. He just isn't, right? Like I maybe I need to sit down and just watch Benda's snaps again and maybe try to figure out why that is. Because he had another career high in tackles last week. I believe 8 was a number he had against Mississippi State. And I could see maybe from the advanced analytics perspective that I don't want to speak out of turn. Maybe he's not doing everything right by the book, right? But Benda just continues to impress me, man. Like, dude's just a star in his role, never complains, understands that week 8, week 9, he may be out of the starting lineup again. You'll never know that dude is unhappy. You'll never know it. That matters to me. So I'm going with Benda.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Vernon Broughton because I think he's kind of been right under our nose, and he was solid. He was a big part of the run defense last year, but now I just can't get that image of him exploding through the A gap and swiping the ball out of Michael Van Buren's hands and pouncing on it in a really big momentum play in that Mississippi State game, because that had come right after the Jaden Blue fumble. Yeah. So I feel like Vernon Broughton is really figuring it out, and he's making a name for himself. He's making himself some money. So as much as I'm impressed with Leon Galafau, because I think he is going to be a star, and in some ways already is. I mean, he's got 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and a safety, for crying out loud. Really like what Leon Galafau's doing, but I'm gonna go into the trenches where those guys, it's hard for them to get noticed, Eric, and I'll go with Vernon Broughton as my underrated defensive player from Phase 1. All right, good stuff today here on the Flagship Podcast. Thanks, everybody. Please like and subscribe the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Feel free to give us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. That would help. It's always nice. Bosses appreciate that stuff. And please become an annual member at horns247.com. I mean, this has the makings of a special season. It already has been a whole heck of a lot of fun. So don't delay. Get over there. We got daily chats going. We got scoop left and right, team scoop, recruiting scoop. Become an annual member so that you get all the VIP access to all the team sites on the preeminent 24/7 sports network. For Eric Henry, I'm Chip Brown. Until next time, we'll see you over at horns247.com. Stay safe and keep the faith.